Welcome to Family Drama Stories from Reddit. Real family drama told from the heart. Let's begin. I used to believe that dedication would eventually be rewarded, until the day I opened the old document folder. That afternoon, I went to my folks' residence in Salem, Oregon, as I did every weekend. My mother, Denise, was not tech-savvy, so I frequently assisted her in checking bills, organizing tax papers, and scanning vital documents. That two-story red brick house, which I had spent over 10 years financially supporting and renovating tile by tile, felt like a second home to me. "Could you please look at this for me?" she remarked, handing me a disorganized stack of papers before returning to her orchids in the backyard. I sat down at the dining table, combing through the pile, until my gaze fell on a thick, cream-colored packet labeled in bold estate plan and will. I paused, not because I was curious. At least that is what I told myself. But I wanted to be sure everything was in order. I'd always been the one who worried about stuff like this. He was responsible for keeping the family together. But as I flipped to the asset distribution page, I felt a tightening in my chest. My parents owned everything. The house cost more than $450,000, and there were no savings. Samantha, my younger sister, was explicitly designated to receive the new SUV as well as Mom's wedding band. And me? Not one word. There isn't a single reference other than the non-specific statement, "We love both our daughters." I squeezed the paper, and my knuckles turned white. Every recollection of working 2 jobs to cover their mortgage, of driving through snowstorms to bring Mom's medication, of repairing plumbing and replacing roofing, each of them felt as if they had been slapped out of existence by the cold, printed sentence. I heard my mother re-enter the home, her steps light behind me. "Hannah, have you found the statement?" I got up, will in hand, and turned around. My voice was calm. Incredibly calm. "Mom, is this real?" She halted, her gaze drawn to the paper in my palm. "Oh, Hannah, what exactly does that mean?" I cut her off, my throat stiff and each syllable piercing. "A lifetime of caring for you and Dad, and I'm written off as if I never existed?" My father, Richard, strolled in from the living room right then, coffee mug in hand. He sighed, as if about to make a weather-related observation. "You don't have to react like this, Hannah. You are doing good. Samantha? She is still figuring things out." I laughed. Humorless and dry. Trying to figure things out? She's 30. She switches jobs every 3 months, relies on you two, and can't pay her own phone bill. I'm the one who has paid your mortgage for the past 3 years, repaired the roof last winter, and kept this property from falling apart dollar by dollar. My mother took a step nearer and placed her palm over mine, as if to calm me down. "Do not overthink it. I just wanted your sister to feel secure." I drew my hand away and nodded slightly, my eyes chilly. "Secure? So what about me? Who is the sole one who has kept this place standing for all these years?" They said nothing. I returned the will to the table, as if it had been a proclamation of war. "Thank you for showing me where I actually stand." I headed towards the door without looking back. Nobody called out behind me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel pain. I simply felt empty. A calm, hollow emptiness that chilled my bones. I never went back to that house after discovering the will. 2 weeks passed in silence, with no calls or messages, as if I never existed in their world. I convinced myself that if they had any conscience, they would reach out. But rather than an apology or explanation, I received a message from Dad. "Hannah, this month's mortgage is due. Can you transfer it quickly? Deadline Friday." I sat still, staring at the letter with amazement. Part of me nearly laughed. There's no mention of what transpired. No one asked if I was okay, just a demand, like if I were their default ATV. I typed back, each word like ice. "I believe Samantha will be able to manage it. That house is hers now, correct?" Then I put my phone down and did not wait for a response. 10 minutes later, the screen lit up again. This time, it was Mom. "Hannah, do not do this. We need to talk." I didn't respond. I was not sad. I didn't even feel angry anymore. every flimsy optimism I had ever possessed had been replaced with a ruthlessly clear vision. For years, I assumed that my efforts would be recognized. I was mistaken, and I had lost interest in playing savior. 3 days later, the next communication arrived. From Samantha, "You are overreacting. Mom and Dad did not mean it that way. You've always been autonomous, whereas I'm just not. You are aware of this." I typed slowly, each letter ripping through my sister's false facade. "Then prove that you deserve what you've received. Begin by paying the mortgage." No response. Another week passed in silence, until one Monday morning, while I was sipping coffee in my kitchen, my phone vibrated with a transfer request. Exactly $2,900.00. From my mother. There's no message, just a cold withdrawal request, as heartless as the way they'd left me out of everything. I hit decline without hesitation. Minutes later, the phone rang. It was Mom. I let it ring till the fourth buzz and then declined the call. A message appeared quickly. "Hannah, I know you saw it." "Why did you decline?" I closed my eyes, took a big breath, and responded, "Because it is no longer my duty. Ask Samantha." For the first time in my life, I felt in control. I wasn't the one scrambling to repair cracks that I didn't cause. I wasn't giving up my entire childhood to make up for other people's mistakes. 3 days later, Samantha texted again. "You're being incredibly selfish. Didn't you always say that family is first?" I read the message over and over. Family? She was referring to the same family that viewed me like an outsider, as a walking pocketbook. I replied with a single sentence. Family values fairness and respect, not using someone till they are no longer useful, using someone. Following then, there were no further messages. Silence fell over everything, but this time it wasn't lonely. It felt like relief, a release from a burden I'd been carrying for far too long. But deep down, I knew this quiet was just the beginning, because they would come back. When no one else offered assistance, when the property was at risk of foreclosure, Samantha, despite her inheritance, couldn't pay her bills on time. And when that day came, I'd be prepared, not to save them, but I wanted to show them that I was no longer the one who sacrificed without saying thank you. Samantha's next message arrived about midnight, when I was halfway through a historical novel and sipping hot tea. The phone lit up, and I didn't have to open it to guess the tone. "You're exaggerating this situation." I scrolled and continued reading. "Everyone is already freaked out. Why are you being so theatrical right now? It's only a few payments." "You have always done it." A dry laugh escaped my lips. There was no humor. "Only a few payments. It's easy to say when you've never paid an energy bill in your life." I typed back. "I am not being dramatic. I am being clear, and you should get used to it." Her response came less than a minute later. "You're quite selfish. Don't be surprised if your parents don't forgive you." I put the phone down. For the first time in years, I felt no guilt. I wasn't worried about what would happen if they were upset, or focused with being a good daughter. I had crossed a line. The difference between being exploited and standing up for oneself. The next day, I called the bank and asked that my name be removed from the joint account used for the mortgage. I immediately contacted the utility companies and canceled all of the auto payments I had been covertly managing for years. I erased the bill reminders from my phone. Like a tiny ritual to commemorate the end of my role in their household. That night, I cleaned my small apartment. I played my favorite playlist. And I got myself a chocolate cake that I had always wanted but never bought, because the money was always needed for something more urgent. I began sleeping soundly. I awoke without the jolt of a payment notice. I went to work without feeling as if I were carrying 3 other adults on my back. I even registered for an online art course. Something I'd fantasized about for years but always put off because I didn't have time and I wasn't allowed to be selfish. As my life began to breathe on its own again, the knocks from the past became louder. My mother, Denise, contacted me early the following week. I didn't respond. A message appeared immediately after. "Hannah, we need to chat. Your sister does not know how to pay her internet subscription. Can you help?" I did not respond. 2 days later, another one. The landline was severed. She says she is unable to log in. I do not know what to do. I read the message, opened the bookcase, and took out the old notepad, where I had previously written down every password, billing schedule, and customer service number. My parents always phoned me when they didn't know what to do. I handled every payment that Samantha forgot to make. This time, I closed the notepad and returned it. I was not their assistant. I wasn't the foundation of a system that eliminated me the moment I ceased being helpful. 3 days later, another communication from Samantha arrived in my inbox. "Are you fooling me now? The power is about to be turned off. Will you truly allow that happen to our family?" I responded with only one sentence. "No. I'm just letting everyone take responsibility for their own decisions." Silence. I did not hear anything for several days, until one morning a call came in from an unexpected number. "Mrs. Lorraine, my parents' neighbor of 20 years. Your mother asked whether I knew anyone who was selling houses. I believe they are no longer managing effectively." I thanked her and hung up. I didn't feel smug. I didn't grin and I didn't cry. I simply sat by the window, watching the sun shine through the trees in front, and realized something. For the first time in my life, I was not overwhelmed with responsibility or remorse. I had decided to break the cycle. And I was not going back. The first communication arrived on Monday morning, from someone I did not expect. Mr. Walter was my parents' neighbor for more than 20 years. "Hannah, are your parents all right?" Denise inquired as to the current day. She felt she had gotten the date incorrect. But she just received a letter from the bank. It clearly states, "Notice of foreclosure." I stared at the screen. So something had happened, faster than I thought. It's been 4 weeks since I discontinued all support. It took 4 weeks for the house I had previously kept together to ultimately collapse. An hour later, my mother called. I didn't respond. A message appeared immediately after the ring. "Hannah, please. We truly need you now." This is serious. I read it and then put the phone down as if it had nothing to do with me. But in reality, my chest still felt heavy. I had previously imagined that this moment would provide some strange sense of satisfaction, but it did not. Only hollow, aching tiredness. Perhaps because I was so used to cleaning up after others, I didn't respond. Samantha came to my door 2 days later for the first time in weeks. She stood there in a wrinkled hoodie, without makeup, clutching a jumbled stack of documents. Her eyes conveyed panic. She said, breathless, "I only need 5 minutes." "Only 5 minutes, Hannah?" I crossed my arms and blocked the doorway. There was no pity in my eyes. "Are you come to ask for money?" "Not money," she blurted out, her voice trembling. I need your assistance in talking to the bank. I do not comprehend the terminology they are using. I'm overwhelmed." "What about the inheritance you received?" I inquired in a casual tone, as if I were discussing the weather. She murmured, "It's tied up in an investment portfolio. If I withdraw now, there will be a penalty. I didn't expect it to spiral that quickly." I raised an eyebrow. "Yet you signed everything without hesitation. I assumed Mom and Dad had things under control. They stated everything was set." "I did not think—" "Exactly. You did not think, like every time." Samantha went silent. I stepped out and slammed the door behind me. This is the lesson you should learn. Everyone stumbled. However, no one grows if someone is always catching them. Are you really going to let them lose their house? I won't allow anything happen. They made their decision and they must now deal with the consequences. I turned away, leaving Samantha alone in the corridor. 3 days later, I met across Ben, an old classmate and real estate agent, at a networking event at the local arts center. I was about to tell him about the photo project I was working on when he interrupted. Eyes widened. "Hello? Is your parents' house on Vine Street?" I nodded. "Someone from my team mentioned them. They appear to be seeking to sell quickly. The house is old and in need of repair, with a high chance of foreclosure. Are you doing well?" I gave a slight smile. "I am fine. I suppose they are not." Ben seemed to want to say more, but decided against it. That night, I opened my laptop and saw an email from a legal assistance charity I served with in college. They were looking for mentors for a new program that helps elders manage their housing debt. I smiled gently. Life had an odd habit of looping back. I sat calmly for a while before starting the application. This is not for my parents. Samantha will not benefit from this. For me. The person who had finally learned to let go. I didn't have to save the old house anymore, but if I could use everything I'd gone through to prevent someone else from falling into the same cycle, it would be worthwhile. Saturday afternoon, I had just finished a photography workshop and returned to my quiet little apartment, expecting nothing more than a hot cup of tea and a relaxing evening. But as I drove into the parking lot, I noticed a familiar silver minivan parked at the gate. I co-signed for the van 4 years ago when my father, Richard, was unable to make the payments. As a final sign of trust, I passed the title to him last year. It sat there as a stinging remembrance. I got out of my car and walked gently. My parents were waiting near the building entrance. Samantha stood slightly behind, clutching her purse, her eyes filled with hardly veiled concern. I said nothing. I paused a few paces away, arms crossed and waiting. My mother, Denise, spoke first. Her voice trembled. "Hannah, I am sorry we had to come here, but things have gone out of hand. The bank is going to review the property next week." My father continued, his voice quieter and more tired than I'd ever heard. "I know we made a mistake, but if the house is removed, your mother will be unable to manage it." I stared at him, my expression colder than it had ever been. "So when you were making your will, why did you feel I wasn't worth including?" He lowered his eyes and fidgeted with the edge of his coat. "Back then, we assumed you would be all right. You have always been powerful." "What about Samantha?" "But Samantha," I interrupted, "gets to fail, be forgiven, and inherit everything." I turned to face my sister. She squeezed her lips together and said nothing. There is no denial, no excuse. "I gave up my youth," I said, my voice calm but every word piercing, without reservation. In response, I received indifference and the expectation that Hannah will take care of it. I'm no longer in that role. My mother's tears fell. We had no idea it would come to this. "Can't you help?" "Just a little. For a few months. Till things settle." I shook my head, a breeze blowing through my chest, wiping away years of commitment. I'm not refusing because I can't help. I'm saying no because if I do, everyone will go back to thinking they don't need to change. Samantha eventually spoke, her voice tiny and broken. I didn't anticipate it would get that complicated. "I assumed it just needed time. I didn't expect you to go away so quickly." I gazed at her for the first time in weeks. I warned not to move away quickly. I waited and hoped. However, our family chose to ignore all of it. "So is this really the end?" my mother whispered, tears still on her cheeks. I glanced at the woman who had once rocked me to sleep, who I had brought medicine to, taken to the ER, and cooked for after my father retired. And I realized more clearly than ever the distinction between blood and true love. "I didn't end this," I explained. "It ended when you determined who deserved to be identified and who did not." Nobody said a thing. The late autumn wind blew through the naked trees, conveying a chill that no garment could warm. I stepped onto the porch, took out my keys, and unlocked the door. Before going inside, I turned back one more time. "I hope you can find a way, but I am no longer this family's lifeline." I looked at Samantha and spoke carefully. "If you really want to grow up, this is your chance. I've stepped off the merry-go-round. Now it's your turn." I walked in, closing the door behind me. The wind in the corridor drowned out their footsteps as they walked away. I stood silently in my living room. The afternoon sunlight cast a long beam over the floor through the glass. There were no tears, no heartbreak, a calm quiet. I assumed that after that final showdown, they'd be silent. I thought that the reality would cause them to ponder and take a silent step back in pride. But I overestimated the self-awareness of those who had always relied on others. A week later, I received a message. "Olivia is a close coworker at the art center. Hannah, are you on Facebook? You should examine your mother's page. She's providing some incredible content." My palm trembled slightly when I entered Denise Baker into the search field. Her timeline was full of heartfelt posts, floral photographs, and motivational quotes. However, one notable post caused me to freeze, with a photo of our former house attached. It is devastating to see your own daughter turn her back on family. Abandoning ailing and elderly parents, refusing to assist in our hour of need, we gave up all for her. Over 80 shares. The responses were filled with pity, consolation, and criticism for the ungrateful child. I chewed my lip before scrolling down and seeing another post. This is from my father, Richard. We believed Hannah adored her family, but when we needed her most, she went away without saying anything. The house is about to be confiscated, but she acts as if nothing is happening. Then Samantha posted something, with a distinct mocking tone. Some individuals are only kind when they are above you and gazing down. When family members beg them to step down and help, they prefer silence. That's today's definition of strong, I suppose. I held my phone more tightly. I was not angry. I wasn't even astonished. I was tired. When guilt was no longer effective, they resorted to public humiliation. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't silent anymore. That night I opened my laptop and went into Facebook, which I rarely use. I made one post. There is no backdrop color, no fancy design, but every word was clear as day. My family is telling a one-sided story, so here's the reality from my perspective. I've attached a photo of the will with Samantha listed as the sole beneficiary. I provided screenshots of my mortgage payments, utility bills, and insurance. Then I included the last text I received from my mother. We're asking for $2,900 to rescue the house. I ended with a single line. My silence was not consent. I was only waiting for the appropriate moment to disclose the truth. That moment is now. Within 10 minutes, the first comment had emerged. "Hannah, did you really do all of this? I can't believe this," an old friend commented. "You are one of the nicest persons I know. Do not allow anyone make you doubt it." People gradually began to share the post. Some who knew my parents joined in. Many people expressed amazement. Samantha always seemed to live dangerously. Now it makes sense. Nobody should be taken advantage of like that, especially not within their own family. My post spread immediately, not because it was sensational, but it was real. It was honest, and it didn't run away. 2 days later, my mother took down all of her posts. My father deactivated his account. Samantha updated her profile picture to a black and white flower. When things fell out of her control, she would make a vague, dramatic move. I did not respond. I did not post anything else. I just sat in my apartment, listening to the rain gently tap on the window, and for the first time I felt that justice was on my side. I did not require an apology. I didn't need them to lower their heads. I only needed them to stop. And it appeared that they had finally realized that I was no longer someone they could manipulate. One post, enough to bring an end to the years in which I had been forced to remain silent. And now I'm writing the next chapter in real life, rather than on social media. Since the day I posted, I haven't heard from Mom, Dad, or Samantha. Everything has remained as calm as a forgotten lake after a storm, but not in the solitude of waiting. This was the stillness of acceptance. They'd lost the only person who never gave up despite breaking everything. I was the opposite. I started to live. Every Monday morning, I went to the art center to teach my first photography class to high schoolers. Their eyes brightened up as they held a camera for the first time. They perceived the world through a lens. It made me realize that not everyone sees the same thing. Sometimes you have to choose your own angle. In the evenings, I attended a part-time video editing class, a talent I had always wanted to master but put off because my family needs me. No one needs me anymore. And for the first time in my life, I felt freeing. I began taking leisurely nighttime walks. I baked on weekends. I posted photographs on Instagram without worried about being dubbed false. I made some new buddies in class, people who didn't know I was the one who kept the family together. As a result, I finally had the freedom to be myself. While I was learning to breathe across town, the house at 218 Elm Street began to appear on real estate listings. My friend Marcus, who is now a realtor, texted me. "Hannah, your parents' house is for sale. Asking $390,000, 0 cents, with no offers. It appears that they were unable to repair either the roof or the faulty wiring." I was not surprised. There was no one available to fix the fuse box at midnight. Nobody replaced the water heater or called the repairman on time. I am no longer myself. That house survived because of me, and now it reflects the truth. Neglected, run down, and with no one left to keep it up. Lorraine, the elderly neighbor, gave me one more update. She called to check in, but before hanging up, she casually said, "Oh, and it appears Samantha has moved back in with your parents." I frequently see her doing grocery runs. She doesn't seem happy. I looked up from my laptop and sipped my still warm coffee. Previously, hearing something like that would have made my chest tighten with concern, but now I just shrugged. Perhaps Samantha needed to experience the instability she had previously ignored. I wasn't happy they were struggling. I simply did not want to bear the burden of decisions made by others. For the first time in 10 years, my savings account was steadily increasing. I scheduled a fall trip to Seattle to photograph the changing leaves. I put down a deposit for a new semi-pro camera, something I used to regard as an unnecessary luxury. I was learning to care for myself in the same way that I had cared for an entire family. I also began writing again. Not defensive posts, but a blog about breaking away from toxic family dynamics. Some entries were widely shared. Many people messaged me, thanking me for saying what they never had the words to express. And on a rainy afternoon, while I was editing photos in my favorite cafe, my phone buzzed with a notification from a real estate site. Price dropped by $30,000, 0 cents on property at 218 Elm. Owner seeking urgent sale. I looked at the photo of the house. Dark roof tiles, rotting fence, peeling window frames. It used to symbolize duty, pressure, and expectation. Now it was just a house waiting to be rescued. And I wasn't the rescuer anymore. I tapped hide notification, closed my phone, and smiled. A soft smile, lighter than air but deeper than any sigh I'd swallowed over the years. I didn't belong there anymore. One early winter afternoon, I was walking around Liberty Lake with my new camera. The golden light of dusk cut through bare branches, casting soft beams across the water. I stopped, raised my camera, and captured the perfect frame. A little boy running in the distance, his mother behind him, laughing and calling out. In that moment, I realized some things aren't meant to be held onto because they were never truly yours to begin with. I used to believe family was something you could never lose, that blood was an unbreakable bond. But now, I know. The thing that makes a family real isn't DNA, it's respect and gratitude. I had given everything in hopes of being seen, and in return, I became the name left off a will, the one called dramatic for refusing to carry others' burdens any longer. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. I had just let go. They still lived there, in that ancient house, now offered for the 3rd time. Word was, anytime someone came to view it, Samantha tried to act like a responsible homeowner. But when queried about maintenance records or repair costs, she'd just smile sheepishly. Because all those years, no one ever told her what to do. I never went back. Not once. My mother once sent me a handwritten letter, sealed in a familiar blue envelope with handwriting I knew by heart. She wrote of her sleepless nights, not knowing where to begin anew. That your father isn't as powerful as he used to be. In 2025, more of us are realizing that love doesn't mean limitless sacrifice, especially when it isn't mutual. Hannah's story reminds us that being dependable is not a life sentence. For years, she believed dedication would eventually be rewarded. Instead, it became the very reason she was taken for granted. Letting go of toxic expectations isn't an act of cruelty. It's an act of clarity. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival.